As the 21st century began, human evolution was at a turning point. Natural selection, the process by which the strongest, the smartest, the fastest reproduced in greater numbers than the rest, a process which had once favored the noblest traits of man, now began to favor different traits. Most science fiction of the day predicted a future that was more civilized and more intelligent. But as time went on, things seemed to be heading in the opposite direction, a dumbing down. How did this happen? Evolution does not necessarily reward intelligence. With no natural predators to thin the herd, it began to simply reward those who reproduced the most and left the intelligent to become an endangered species.
Having kids is such an important decision.
We're just waiting for the right time. Well, we finally decided to have children, and I'm not pointing fingers, but it's not going well.
And this is helping.
I'm just saying that before I have in vitro, maybe you should be willing to...
It's always me, right?
Well, it's not my sperm count.
I'm gonna own you! That's my boy!
Cleavon is lucky to be alive. He attempted to jump a jet ski from a lake into a swimming pool and impaled his crotch on an iron gate. But thanks to recent advances in stem cell research and the fine work of Doctors Krinsky and Altshuler, Cleavon should regain full reproductive function.
And you thought it was just a movie, and yet every day we find ourselves waking up in the idiocracy of America. We are living in a day when smart people are being silenced so that stupid people aren't offended. Nobody seems to know how to put anything into historical context anymore. Nobody can look at anything that happened in the past in light of how we have progressed, how we have moved forward. No, we want to cancel, we want to erase, we want to act as if. And then on the other hand, we dream up new holidays, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. But recently, in the state of Mississippi, there was a little mishap at a school that never should have made the national news, but it has become a national thing. Two students in the state of Mississippi whose parents were really involved in making sure that their kids were doing what they needed to do to achieve academically for things like scholarships and a future, thought it was a little off when their kids were not the valedictorian and the salutatorian. So they went to meet with the administrator. The administrator did some checking, and sure enough, Shazam Batman, it looks like a mistake happened. A wrong calculation occurred. Now, I can tell you that before I did what I'm doing now, that I had worked for 20 plus years as a school administrator of 3 different schools. And I can tell you that from time to time, yes, there are errors that happen when calculating grade point averages, whether it's for the decision process of valedictorian, salutatorian, getting a young person's transcript ready to send off to a college or colleges of their application. It happens. And sometimes those things have to be rechecked, they have to be tweaked, they have to be adjusted. And I can tell you that myself and others administrators have had to make the decision, and it's happened for me once, and I'm sure for other administrators as well, where you have to have a co-valedictorian, a co-salutatorian. It happens. But in this particular case, what has got the ire of the national media is the fact that, well, the 2 students that were awarded valedictorian and salutatorian were black, and the students that protested were white. So they want to make this a race thing. In fact, the New York Times ran a headline, 2 black students win school honors. Then came a call for a recount. Now, of course, immediately this is being presented in the light of, well, because these were black students who won valedictorian and salutatorian. Obviously, there had to be a recount. No, how about maybe the parents of the kids that wanted the recount or wanted this looked into, they had been tracking their children's academic progress probably since kindergarten. And I can tell you, I've had experience with parents like that. In fact, one of my graduates several years ago drove my academic secretary absolutely insane, checking and can they get any type of weighted grade point average for this? Can this be factored in? I mean, they drove my academic secretary nuts. In fact, I won't tell you what the academic secretary said about them in my office one afternoon. And it wasn't a race thing. It was on the one hand, it was a parent pride thing. On the other hand, it's also, though, parents who are active and involved in their kids' education, and they want them to achieve, they want them to be successful. Yes, they would like them to have those honors. Now, the school administrator happens to be, in this case, black. He took a look at what was brought to him by the complaint brought to him by these white parents, and he got out his school handbook and he said, you know what? We did make a mistake. Now, when he acknowledged the mistake, there's almost an inference here that he said, like, we've made a big mistake. Like, the two wrong people have been selected, and here we have the two right people. But he decided what to do was he would just split it. There would be two valedictorians, two salutatorians. Again, there are thousands of schools across this country over the past 100+ years in doing this that have had to do the exact same thing. It happens. But of course, the media is not going to tolerate that. Somehow, these black students have been cheated. In fact, the website for Bet Black Entertainment Television wrote, Mississippi black valedictorian forced to share honors with white classmate. So PMS-NBC decided to interview these students who they feel are being slighted, being robbed, being cheated.
Anything left for you and your family to be able to do?
We're still fighting for it.
Have you had a conversation with the person who was named your co-valedictorian?
No, sir.
Would you like to?
Yeah, I would. Just to know, like, why they feel like it should be earned. Like, they should have it, knowing they didn't earn it.
What about you, Layla? Would you want to have that conversation?
No, sir.
You don't want to talk to them about it?
No, sir. I just feel like you're going to be filled with excuses of why it's not racist and why they assume they was one or two from the beginning.
Wow. Did you hear the way the statement was phrased? Why they assume they was 1 and 2 from the beginning. Why they assume they was 1 and 2 from the beginning. I don't even have the words right now. And why do I have this feeling that it wasn't just the parents who came forward and said, we think a mistake has been made. We've got a son here, a daughter here with a 4.0 average. They've never had anything less than an A- since the second grade. Could you look into this? Why do I also feel that when the valedictorian and salutatorian were first announced, that even some of the faculty members of that school went, huh? In fact, it might have been some of the faculty members that went to the parents and said, we think there's a problem. we think a mistake has been made. And of course, no one dare say or insinuate that maybe we ought to take a look at the administrator, that he was trying to manufacture something, because after all, it is now not only the month of Pride, but it's now Juneteenth month. And again, this is not in any way meant to reflect on anyone's nationality, ethnic background, race, etc. But it is about someone's intelligence and achievement. In fact, I think if we're going to look at this honestly, that there are many school districts across this country where those that have achieved high honors, especially in schools where there is a large Asian student body, we pretty much can take a look at those schools and know who's going to score the top honors in math and in the sciences. That's an observation based on reality, based on fact. But instead, we are living in a time when instead of being interested in facts, instead of being interested in truth, we are interested in social justice narratives. This is what's happening to us. We live in a society where a foul-mouthed comedian can stand on a stage and just spew absolute four-letter filth about how he feels about the female species, calling them bees and hoes, etc., etc., etc. And then that same foul-mouthed comedian can make an offhanded comment that one night I'm watching cartoons with my nephew and Pepe Le Pew came on. I'm like, whoa, Pepe. That one seemingly joke/innocuous comment got other people looking at it because they consider this particular comedian, stoned out of his mind, crackhead, Dave Chappelle. Oh, did I just say that? They began to look at it and say, yeah, Pepe's sexist. Pepe's a sexual aggressor. Look what he's always doing. He's always hitting on that poor female cat. We can't have this. And so Pepe got canceled from the new Space Jam movie, and Warner Brothers is no longer going to make Pepe Le Pew cartoons. Can I point out the obvious here? It's a cartoon. It is a drawing on a piece of paper. But we can make movies where people are being gorged, gouged, sawed, horrific, heinous, horrendous, and none of that plays into anybody's psyche, encouraging them to go out and commit mass shootings or do gory things to other people. But a cartoon skunk and cat is going to teach a generation of males to go out and violently and unwantedly, aggressively attack females. See, this is the idiocracy that we're in now. This is where we're at. The purposeful dumbing down of people. And let's just cut right to the chase. The reason they want them stupid people are easier to control. Stupid people do what they're told. They put the hat on and they never take it off. Because after all, if I take the hat off, I could catch something and die. As mandates are being lifted across this country. And you've got some people saying, oh, at last, finally. So you're actually thanking your jailer for giving you a new privilege. A privilege that never should have been denied you to begin with. The fundamental basic right to breathe. So that now we still have, even though these mandates are being lifted, I live in a state that is, quote, open, wide open. And yet, there are still people wearing the virtue signal, alone, in their car. We have dumbed people down to absolute, just non-thinking, reactive, obedient sheeple. We call what happened on January 6th an insurrection. We call what happened in the streets of Minneapolis and across this nation all last summer and is reheating up again in Minnesota, we call that freedom fighting. Okay? The idiocy that is being presented to us on a daily basis, the dumbing down of our educational system, the dumbing down of the information that gets disseminated to us through the so-called mainstream media, the lying legacy corporate corrupt media, which all of them, from Time Warner to all of the mass media, you do know that they like to do business in and with China. You think that might explain why they don't want to hear anything about the lab leak theory or Hunter Biden or how China cheats economically and steal you? Or do you just allow them to spoon feed you the narrative and the headline like an idiocracy? I'm being serious. I'm going to, as a pastor, quote you a little scripture. My people perish for lack of knowledge. My people perish for lack of knowledge. One of the greatest things you can teach your child is to think. My father, when he was alive and I was a kid, evening meal time, we did the obligatory, how everybody's day go. But my dad, who shaped a lot of my political ideology, was very good at the dinner table of playing what I call devil's advocate. And he loved to get family arguments started at the table. And what he wanted was for us, his children, to be able to argue back. And obviously there were lines we couldn't cross. He was dad. But he did want us to passionately and intellectually stand our ground and debate. Make a defense. Think it through. One of the things that I say on my radio show every day, this is not talk radio, this is thought radio. Radio designed for thinking people. People no longer think. They just simply react to what they're told. There were so many things during this last year that made absolutely zero sense, and it wasn't about fighting the science. You've got to follow the science, follow the scientific experts. The experts know what to do. And what have we found out over the last year plus? The reason they keep changing, according to Dr. Fauci, is science is evolving and we're finding more and more out about the virus. Therefore, we have to change what we said yesterday to what we're going to do today. Well, how come science is evolving on that issue but not on climate change? Because when any of us ever call anything that is said to us regarding climate change into question, like, what do you mean we got to abandon all fossil fuel in the next 5 years or the planet's just going to explode? Somehow we're heretics. Somehow we're nincompoop, idiot morons, science deniers, because the science is so-called settled. Apparently it's not still evolving on that issue. And so don't question it. Just do what you're told. That's the real reason the lying legacy corporate corrupt mainstream media hates what we do here. The internet. Online. It's why the big tech companies have become the new guardians of censorship. How dare we exchange ideas? How dare we think? Do you understand why I said a few months ago, when everybody was clamoring for their schools to be reopened? And I knew why some of you were saying it, because, again, it was that we've got to get back to normalcy. We got to get back to life. I said, take full advantage of the fact your schools are closed. Educate your kids properly, correctly. In fact, as far as I was concerned, every public school in America could stay closed forever. Now, we know that the powers that be wanted them closed for a couple of reasons. One, it was all about dismantling and disrupting the economic engine that was driving this country, that would drive the 45th president then out of office. You are so much better off either homeschooling your child or putting them in a good Christian or private school in your area. And I don't care if you had to work 2 or 3 jobs to make that happen, it is worth the investment. I carried on my father's tradition when I raised my 4 kids. And I'm going to be honest with you. I've got a couple of kids that would love to come on here and debate some of my political ideology. And on the one hand, as a dad, when one of your kids disagrees with you, that's kind of like, hey. On the other hand, you know what it lets me know? They're thinking. They're thinking. And I know them well enough to know that they're kind of falling into, 2 of them anyway, falling into that sage advice we got from Winston Churchill. I should say sage observation we got from Winston Churchill. If a young man is not a liberal, he doesn't have a heart. If an old man isn't a conservative, he doesn't have a brain. And I'm watching one of my kids that had kind of leaned a little in that direction, even already. And they're now in their mid-20s and they're making their way in the world and they're kind of looking around. They're not quite ready to say, Dad, you're right. But I'm noticing they're starting to modify, change positions. Why? Because they're thinking. Democrats don't want you to think. Liberals don't want you to think. Ideologues don't want you to think. They want you to be spoon-fed an agenda, a propaganda, and just accept it. Don't fight it. Don't argue it. Can I tell you, some of you would still be muzzled if some of us hadn't pushed back from day one on this. Now, I don't know. At the risk of being mean, I don't know all of the students involved in this particular situation in Mississippi. But watching the video of the 2 young people that were initially awarded, was there anything of high academic honors about the 2 of them that you looked at and immediately recognized, wow, Ivy League all the way? Wow, the future they're going to have. Again, this isn't about race. See, that is the lie and the line of the Marxists. Make everything about race. Somehow get us warring with each other. Never, ever actually make it about the truth. Never, ever, ever logic anything through. Just get you emotionally charged and involved and friction. Because at the end of the day, this is what we're going to have leading in this country. And unfortunately, even though it's a movie made by the creators of Beavis and Butthead, Idiocracy could actually become our destiny if we don't stop allowing this cancel culture and all of this other social BS hogwash to be challenged, pushed back, fight back. Your kids are worth it. And please, I implore you, now that it's summer and you've got some time to look around, I promise you, somewhere in your area, there is probably a good, and here's my bias coming through, Christian school that is involved in what we call classical education. You want a school with a classical education model, non-revisionist history, and grades are awarded based on your actual knowledge and not some type of curve based on your life background. Thus endeth the lesson for today. Hey, that's it for this rant. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you're a subscriber to the channel. Smack the bell, click the word all to get notification of my next rant.